So John, I think my campground stories are kind of popular. Yeah, you want to hear another one?
yeah, sure.
Well, it was like the first season, we pretty much about finished construction of the campground. We had to start getting supplies to be able to start it up. And we're kind of in the middle of nowhere, and you don't really have UPS or anything like that. So everything you ordered comes on freight. So it's just like a big truck just shows up one day, and there's all
Right.
kinds of stuff
Right.
in it. And we're unloading all kinds of things, and they were cleaning supplies and other equipment that we would need, and then there were these big boxes that, I don't know, they were maybe like a meter by a meter by a meter, and while they're kind of bulky, they weren't so heavy that you couldn't lift it, but still, it's like it took a little bit of strength to put it in there. And so there were six of these boxes,
Right.
and you open it up, and it turns out that was in there was like the toilet paper that we needed for the restrooms.
Right.
And I was like 12 at that time. I was just learning to do grids and arrays and stuff like that, and the multiplication. And I realized that when I opened up the box, I wondered how many pieces of toilet or how many rolls of toilet paper, seeing I just counted 10 this way and 10 that way. It's like, wow, that one layer is 100 rolls of toilet paper right there.
Right.
And then we're able to quickly be able to figure out, without actually having to go down, that if you just like to kind of one roll out, it's like, wow, it was 10 deep. So that was
Right.
10 by 10 by 10. So we're looking at 1,000 rolls of toilet paper. That's pretty amazing. And then,
Right.
of course, if you actually looked on it, it said there were 1,000 sheets on each roll. And so it's like 1,000 times that. That's a million. Holy cow. It's like the first time in my life that it was like, I actually was like looking at something. You could say it was a million of something. And
Right.
we had six boxes of those things. Okay. So that was 6 million pieces of toilet paper.
Right.
You just begin to get an idea of how many assholes we had to deal with.
Oh, gosh, that's terrible. Hey, y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I am with Dr. Scott Walter again, and I am wearing the shirt that is on the merch store, but inspired by Scott, because it looks like we actually might be 2 weeks away from Starship to orbit. You never know. But anyway, so we're going to talk a little bit about SpaceX, because that's the reason why Scott is in the car today. And we're going to briefly mention the full self-driving drive, but we're going to spend most of the time talking about something that you did with Chuck yesterday. And sadly, I could not attend. So first of all, welcome. And yeah, what are you doing in a car in obviously
Well,
Florida? So yeah.
right now I'm underneath a Max Brewer Bridge, which
Okay.
is also the Max Brewer Bridge. It turns out it's actually called a Max Brewer Bridge.
Really?
So I was like, oh, this is like an example of a Max Brewer Bridge. That's what it looks like. So I'm underneath it because I'm in the shade, which isn't Titusville, and it's a really good spot to be able to watch launches going out of 39A and
Okay.
39B. So anything on the north side, it's pretty good. I'm here partly because of the shade, and also because there's some pretty good food around here. And the reason I'm here, and yesterday was like a super busy day,
Right. Right. Yeah.
because the whole point was to go up to Jacksonville, where we had heard that the first Optimus bot, or what we will call Optican, in Florida was there. And guess who else lives in Jacksonville? None other than Chuck Cook. So I got to do quite a bit with Chuck yesterday. Do
Right.
Chuck's left turn and check out his beehives. And then we went ahead and went out to visit the Optican, which we're going to talk about. And of course, on the way, just before we get there, Chuck calls me and says, I just got the notification that the static fire is about to happen. So
Right.
we got the static fire because we were going on out there. And of course, the other reason I was out here is that I took kind of a detour to get up to Jacksonville. Is I came up here the night before to see the Crew 7 launch, only to
Right.
find out that they pushed it 24 hours
Right.
because no one knows why. So I got here kind of early. So then I came back down here because I was planning to see the night launch, which is
Right.
expected to happen. Well, that night launch got pushed off till tonight. So this morning was the Crew 7, which I got to see,
Cool.
and it came with a bonus. The
Yes. What
bonus
was that?
was it actually returned to pad. And I
Right.
think that
Right.
might be the first time a crewed launch returned to pad.
Is that true?
I,
I actually don't know the answer to that, but that sounds
yeah,
right.
see,
Yeah.
I don't
Okay.
think so, because they were just so nervous about making sure you have enough reserves and everything else. It's like, no, 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 no. It's like you going out there, you're not going to do a boost back. So I think it was the first time it came back. But the reason why the launch from the night before was pushed till tonight is it would have been a 6 hour difference between the two. And if
Right.
something happened with Starlink launch, that meant probably Crew 7 would not have gone. So the idea is like, well, let's get Crew 7 up. Let's make sure it's okay. Then you guys can launch your Starlink satellites.
Right.
So that's tonight. It's going to be like an 18-hour difference, but it should be in the same calendar day. So it's kind of a double header that
There you
you
go.
get to see two launches. Two launches at nighttime. It's going to be in darkness, but that's fine. So that's the other thing. And of course, the static fire yesterday, the launch is going on here. The drive, I didn't have a chance to see the drive either. I saw it a little bit earlier today, trying to catch up with everything else. And that's rather interesting itself. So take it away, John. Okay. What do we want to talk about first?
Well, first of all, I will put links to Chuck and your video. Certainly the drive one. I hope the Optimus one comes out soon because I don't want to like post mine first. So I'm going to wait until Chuck posts that. But anyway, those will be in the description. But yeah, I was beside myself yesterday because that static fire was really exciting. Obviously, I didn't manage to stay up to Crew 7. I was up till like 2 this morning, but not that late. So I missed it and had to watch it in reruns this morning, which is fine because you already know the answer. There's always that stress of like, oh gosh, they're launching human beings, and it's like, well, okay, everything's fine, so I can watch it and not have to worry about it. And then of course, just like really ecstatic about that version 12 drive, which I have not looked around. Have you looked around and seen any mainstream headlines? Is anybody reporting on it? I mean, obviously, all of us crazy Tesla people
haven't had a chance because I've been trying to catch up on everything I missed yesterday.
Right.
And then Randy already invited me on there, so I had to do a little bit of homework ahead of time to actually watch that, to see what's going on. And your video first. So I saw your video, then I actually saw the live stream later. Right. And then I guess the other thing that was good is I was actually here for looking for Crew 7 the night before because I assumed it's coming out of 39A. This is the place to see it up in Titusville. And of course, I woke up and I looked around and it's like, oh, there's no cars here. You know, that's rather interesting. I guess no one wants to get up this early because normally it will be packed for the launch. Sure. And then I check, and sure enough, like within the 6 hours of when I had arrived and decided to sleep in the back of the Model Y, they decided to push it back to 24 hours.
Right.
But that turned out to be a blessing in disguise because it's only when I checked the whole thing and I looked down there and go, LZ1? What? Wait a minute. LZ1? Oh, whoo, that's good because I wanted to be on the south side in order to see it land. And that was, it was quite a nice launch, especially at night. I mean, you can still see it. You still can see it over water when you're down in Port Canaveral. Right. But the main thing when it came down, that sonic boom was just something else. I mean, I'm not sure if the fish jumped out of the water or if it actually made the water splash.
Really?
It was strange. It was, and it hit you chest really hard, and then the water just kind of jumped all of a sudden, and it almost felt like you were on top of a drum. It really did.
Like the whole skin of the drum bounced.
Like the ground and everything just decided to bounce up and down, just like boom, like that.
That's very, very cool. Wow. I still have not gotten to see a landing yet, which is a bummer. So hopefully that'll happen soon. But it makes you realize why.
Awesome. Also,
the what? Sorry.
Space jellyfish was awesome.
Oh yeah. Wait, was it close enough to dawn that you could see that, or was it just?
It still, because you had the staging that was going on.
Right.
So when you had the staging, there was enough illumination, probably from the second stage, that you were definitely getting all these really nice interactions with the boom. So, I mean, you didn't have like normal space jellyfish, which is really huge, but you get this wonderful interaction that was up there.
That's very cool. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, amazing stuff. It also makes you realize how complicated, like the reason why the Concorde, one of the big reasons it didn't succeed was because they couldn't fly over continental anything. And you know, that sonic boom probably made you think like, yeah, you really can't have that, you know, going across Kansas City, boom, boom, you know, like this thing
constantly. Everyone's out fishing, the water's doing this all the time.
Right. Yeah. So it's very complicated to do that kind of thing. So I don't know, maybe someday we'll have suborbital starships that will get up above the atmosphere so it won't make the booms until it comes back down. And then the other thing, so what did you think about the full self-driving when you got a chance to take a look at it?
I mean, it's kind of interesting that you can't really tell unless you were in the car what it was. But when you begin to realize that it was making all those decisions, not on a rule book, but learned behavior, that is something else.
Right.
And, you know, the feeling I had is like, well, wait a minute, it means it has to sort of have a certain understanding of how the world works to begin with.
Right.
because driving is like a set of rules on top of like a more basic set of rules
Right.
of how things are going, and understanding the goal is to get from point A to point B safely,
Right.
and following certain societal norms,
Right.
uh, and then just training it the right things to make sure it obeys a stop sign the way Nietzsche wants you to do it, versus the way 99.5% of the population does it, which
Yeah.
I think we can argue is like, is that a good idea or not? And of course, the other thing that is, what does this mean for Optimus? And
Right.
I
Right.
think, you, if you were to sit down and heuristically come up with a way to have a car drive and to try to write it heuristically and do the same thing with having a humanoid robot, I think it would be a lot harder for humanoid robot. I'm not saying it's easy for driving, because obviously we can see it's not. However,
Right.
in some very limited, very constrained situations, you can come up with a heuristic rule book that will have your car drive
Right.
and drive reasonably safely and understand all these things. And the problem is it becomes harder and harder to add more and more rules. It becomes more complex. It's
Right.
very fragile because you're not quite sure how one rule might override another one. But then when you have a neural net, and everyone's been calling it the end to end, but I'm calling it to NBN, because what Elon said, it was like nothing but nets.
Yeah, exactly.
So NBN is what it is,
Right.
nothing but nets. So when you start to get into that, that becomes rather interesting. And does that mean that will also make it a lot easier to train Optimus, or Optimus is going to be trained with a lot of videos of human interaction, of how to assemble and put different things together? And think about it. What was it called? Was it the language of lanes, or the
Yeah.
grammar of lanes?
Yeah.
Yeah, they threw that out.
Right.
That's
Right.
gone.
Well,
Elon basically said
it
it's not using that anymore.
and just labeling and everything. It's like
Yeah,
you don't need any of that. Now, again, everyone's going to be like, what a waste of time for all this. But it's like, they didn't know what the right answer. You don't know the right answer till you get there. Right? It's not like some
yeah, yeah. I
magical
mean,
thing where
look
yeah.
what the right answer for mobility was. Boy, that steam engine, what a waste of time.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like we
Or
need to build
honestly,
a steam engine to get to where we are.
right. Or you could say that gas engine, what a waste of time. It
Yeah,
got us through 120 something years plus, and it's still going on, right? So it's like
yeah.
you can't deny the evolution of the technology just because you go someplace else in the
You need
end.
something to iterate on.
Yeah. But the other thing is that it was totally instrumental in them getting their data flywheel working, because whether or not you end up labeling the data in the end, you need to get that data. So it sounded an awful lot. I think there's some people who've kind of said that they believe that the car is just completely gamified now. It's just playing itself in terms of like coming up with scenarios. And I argue strongly against that. I'm sure that they're using that right now, but the real world is not like a game of Go or chess. It doesn't have simple rules. Like once you teach a computer rules, it can follow those rules. Chess is easy. Go is even easier, honestly. I mean, it's super easy in terms of rules. And the complexity is just the emergence of it, but it can, once it learns those rules, can play itself in like over and over and over again. But the real world is way more complicated than that. And
Much messier. Right?
yeah, and of course, my big takeaway after that was that NHTSA needs to get off of Tesla's back, because I made an argument in my video that that basically the car drives badly at stop signs because only poor drivers actually stop at stop signs. It's only the super nervous, really like wussy drivers that are the ones that annoy the hell out of you when you're on the road. And they had to throw away the 99.5% of people who drive normally and go, roll the stop sign. So
Right.
yeah.
I mean, there's certain regulations in different things you're expected to do on the road,
Right.
and then there's what everyone sort of naturally does, because that's just how it feels when you're an experienced driver. And the other thing is, like, do you remember when you had to take your driver's test
Yeah.
and you had to do the written,
Right.
and you were all nervous, like, oh, I got to study for it, and most of your friends said, oh, come on, John, you don't have to study for it, it's common sense.
Right.
And it generally is. A lot of it's there, and nobody knows the rule book. I mean, there
Yeah.
might be a couple of police officers here and there that have actually read it from
Right.
cover to cover.
Actually,
Know it.
I'll break in and I'll give a shout out to my mother-in-law. She is a
Yeah.
compliance officer for the DOT, and she knows the actual rule book. But she's one of the, I mean, it's like this big, and she's one of the rare people, rare
No
people.
no
Yeah.
driver knows it. It's
Yeah.
it's questionable whether every single police officer knows it. They have a rough idea. It's like, well, I think that's a ticketable offense, and they might have to look it up. And the ones that they've typically done, they would know.
Yeah.
And for the most part, the rule book only exists so the judges can give you a fine. That's about
Right.
it. But no driver knows it. They drive on instinct in what is the best way to do in social norms as well,
Right.
of what's expected and not expected of you as a driver and what is reasonable.
Right.
Um, and again, I mean, really, literally, it's all about reasonable because that's how
Yeah.
speed limits are set everywhere.
Right.
It's what a reasonable driver would do on driving down the road. And Elon said that that's one of the things that you could set the maximum speed to 80,
Right.
and if it only feels like it can go safely at 30, it will only do that. So it you might be able to say it's becoming a reasonable driver, which should
Yes.
be the goal.
Yes. And I don't know if you've noticed that, but in my neighborhood, I have a weird thing because of the speed limit thing. I have to manually set the speed limit on the main road outside my neighborhood. And then when I turn in, it thinks the whole thing's 25, but I have to set it to 50 because that's what the speed limit is out there. But when it turns in, it still thinks it's 50, right? That I set it that high, but it reduces the speed automatically to about 30 and only drives like 30 miles an hour in the neighborhood because it says that's the speed it should drive.
That's what it
So
should go. Yeah.
yeah, so it's already making that determination, and you can, if you keep scrolling the wheel over and over again, you can make it like, okay, fine, I'll
You can
go
get
faster, but it takes effort on your part to make
I
it go
had
faster.
that yesterday getting on the highway. I'm on the on ramp. I'm sitting there, and it's saying the speed limit is 45. I'm like,
No,
not 45.
right.
They're going 75, and I
Yeah,
had to scroll up. So again, that's one of those situations where I was rather surprised that it didn't know what the speed limit was yet when it was
right,
on a highway on ramp. Because
right,
yeah, I mean, the highway on ramp in the end, it has to be the speed limit of what the highway is.
right.
Obviously, the off ramp is something else. You need to be
Yeah.
slowing down.
And it does it eventually. I've let it go when there's like nobody behind me just to see. And somewhere around the time when the actual merge lane opens up and you get to the highway, it will actually bump the speed limit up to 65 or whatever it's supposed to be. But
Actually,
it's way too late. You're
well,
supposed to be
okay.
going that
Well,
speed. Yeah.
with the Tesla, it's not too late because you can get up to that
Well,
in an
yes.
instant. But the cars behind you that you're blocking, they're
Right.
getting very angry because
Yes.
you're not speeding up, and of course they don't have the luxury of being able to instantaneously get up to 75 like we
That's
can.
true. Yeah, exactly. So it is weird. And I actually wonder, they're talking about how it's just going to be based on not map data and stuff, which was another big revelation. And the problem for me again is that like that street that I pull out, there's no speed limit sign there until a long ways away. And so
Yeah,
is this thing
how
just
would
going
you
to
know?
drive 25 miles an hour on what's a 50-mile an
Yeah,
hour stretch of
yeah.
road? That's not appropriate.
Now they don't quite do it in the U.S. all the time, but in Germany it's very clear because you have uh, the fact that you have a no speed limit in
Right,
many places. They have to make sure that anyone that comes on the highway knows what the speed limit is because the assumption
right,
might be there's no speed limit. So
right,
you're guaranteed every time they come up to an Ausfahrt or any sort of exit or exchange, right after that is going to be a speed limit because
right,
you can then argue in court. I had no idea what the speed limit was.
right.
I'm not a mind reader. You've got to get it posted somewhere.
That's true in
Same
the
thing if
US.
they
That's actually
parking.
true in the United States too, at least in most states. As soon as you get
Most
on,
places, sometimes there isn't. Sometimes
yeah,
there isn't. I've noticed it's missing, and it might be like a mile or two later. And it's like,
right.
well, how am I supposed to know that? Because I've come on a highway. It's like, well, what is the speed limit? I'll just go
Yeah,
whatever everyone else is going because they
right.
probably know.
Yeah, exactly.
But you can't use that as an argument. It's like,
Right,
oh, no, the speed was 55. Well, technically that's what it is.
right,
Good judge might be able to say, oh, okay, that was reasonable, or how could you know?
right. And the other thing is that hopefully if it's actually learning better about what the environment is, when it the problem is that my road is not clearly a 50-mile an hour road. It actually probably shouldn't be that high of a speed limit because it's kind of halfway residential. It's just like an accident. The
There's
problem is what
people
it's doing is it's coming out of the country, and my neighborhood is right
Yep,
at the intersection between when it was country road and then 50, 55 is reasonable to suddenly city road where there's houses and businesses. And it's
yep.
still 50. I mean, the speed limit sign is there, so it is. But the
Well,
problem is that the car kind of goes like, yeah, it looks like it's 25 here. Maybe 35 would be more reasonable, but it's
there's
taking a wrong guess. So
Yeah,
yeah,
there's the rule book, and then there is something else. So our subdivision, it was a dirt road, and on the
right,
south side it was a farm, and on the north side it was a lot of residents where the driveways would come right out to it. And then the
Right.
subdivision gets put in the south side. It gets paved on through there, and the speed limit is 35, which is by law, that's what it's supposed to be. So even though you have a subdivision that has an entrance on there where you could be
Right.
going faster, the north side is dictating it because the north side you actually have driveways that were coming right on there. So it
Right.
was 35. Then they continued paving it all the way around, and there was like a section that ended up becoming 45 because there were no longer any houses that were coming
Right.
directly to the road. And
Right.
everyone would be going 45 along there, and then they come to our section, they keep going 45, and they knew that. And there was a speed trap there that they were constantly nailing people, and
Right.
then nailing people from our subdivision left to right. And finally, someone got upset because this is what you can do: you can traffic court and demand something about a speed test. And
Right.
then suddenly, I remember going out there, and they had, like, the ropes across the road there where you would go over the bump, and they did the speed thing. And sure enough, like 2 months later, the speed limit went from 35 to 45
Ah.
because the rule is 80% of
Oh.
drivers are considered reasonable. And
Oh.
so 80% of the people are driving at that, then you'll be okay.
Okay. That's interesting. So I didn't know because I do see that sometimes where they set up the two bumper strips, and I guess that makes sense that they're actually potentially looking at statistically what the amount of drivers are that drive that speed. So again, that whole reasonableness is really going to be interesting because Tesla is basically, I think I said, I was riffing on the WWJD, but like, what would humans do? WWHD, and humans tend to drive reasonably in aggregate, but we don't tend to obey the law. And some countries are very different. Like I believe in Germany, if you exceed the speed limit by like 1 kilometer per hour, you can get a ticket. Like they'll do it. But that, in the United States, if you drive the actual speed limit, people get mad at you. If you're doing
Mhm.
exactly 35 and a 35, people get pissed. If you're not doing about 40 plus, you're going to get in trouble. So it's really going to be interesting how all of this works out between NHTSA and robotaxi companies and things like that, because you're going to really tick off the human drivers if these cars strictly obey the law. And you already do. Like I can see people behind me when my car comes to a complete stop and waits for a second or two, people get mad behind me. They're like, what are you doing? So yeah.
Yeah, and then you're going to cause congestion, potentially,
Yeah.
accidents, congestion. Just there's all sorts of reasons
Right.
to kind of go with what people are doing. Again, it's all around reasonable. I mean, the whole
Yeah.
idea of a jury is what reasonable people would think.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So yeah. All right. So let's turn to the main event. We've been blabbing and blabbing. Let me see if I can share my screen here. Let's see. Where is it? That's always a fun question. There we go. I've got way too much stuff opened on my desktop. So you can see that now. I figured I'd start with your
Yep.
picture because,
Yeah, yep. I
shout
sent
out
a
to
bunch
Chuck.
of pictures, kind of out of order, but this is the Tesla
Right.
showroom up in Jacksonville, and of course you can see there's Chuck Cook,
Right.
and there's Optican right behind us. And it
Yeah.
turns out Optican had been sitting there for 3 weeks and nobody noticed.
So you said this is in a showroom slash service center or
No, it's a
like,
showroom. They're a service center
okay.
and it's a
Yeah.
showroom. It's in some sort of outdoor mall. I think it's called like St. John Town Place or something like that.
Gotcha.
Um,
Okay.
yeah. So
Gotcha.
it's yeah, a lot of shops around there and a little bit of foot traffic, not quite as much. It's a different than
Right.
your normal mall setting.
Right.
Okay. So I've got a
So
lot
I
of
don't know.
pictures.
You tell me what pictures you want next, because I don't believe
Okay.
I actually have the movie version of this. I think it's
No,
just
no.
yeah.
Unfortunately, I tried sending you the movie, and because I don't have a good Wi-Fi connection right now, I
Right.
wasn't able to send
Right.
it to you. It refused to do it. So
Okay.
that might be a bit confusing to everyone. If we can go to one of the pictures of the Optimus, which is sort of
Uh,
wide open, that we can, so everyone gets an orientation of what
I
Optimus looks
actually
like.
don't have a picture of the entire bot.
I think I probably sent it to you like just before we got on. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So
Through the magic of editing, we have now cut out the part where I had to go find the pictures. So yes, okay.
uh, part of the reason for us to go up there is there's been a big question whether that is made from real Optimus parts or not, or whether that's an Opticon.
Right.
And I was hearing conflicting stories. A lot of people thought it was like the real deal, really made out of real metal, and others said no, it looks like it's made out of 3D printed parts. And I think we can put that to rest. It definitely is a mannequin, so it's
Okay.
not made out of the real things. However, the geometric accuracy of a lot of the components in there that sort of match up to what we've seen and the CAD drawings that they've had and the other videos of Optimus. But we can see a lot of things that are definitely different. So it's
Right.
mostly plastic with the metal bits being basically the fixtures and fittings that are in there, and
Right.
done kind of in a weird way. And there's also some things that are missing. So one of the things we're going to do is solve the mystery of in the upper arm. We know that there is the ring that kind of goes into the shoulder,
Yes. So
and what
you can,
that was all about, and whether that's a pin joint.
right, the one that's
Yeah,
in the bicep
we can kind of
here.
see that there in the bicep, right? And I think
Okay.
I have a picture in there. If you scroll through, you might see one that I do a close up
Uh,
of it, just so
no,
everyone
not that
kind of
one. Hold
knows.
on. Yep, there we go.
Uh,
I think that's it.
no, right there. Okay.
Yeah.
So the question is like, well, was that just there for to hold to lock it in place or do something like that? And it's like, not really, because that hole that you see there is actually there. And if you look at a lot of the Optimus videos, you will see it's in there. And the big question is like, well, what's the point of the whole hole? And I
Right.
think you will see that there is another image in there showing the top of the shoulder. It might be the image right after that one.
Yeah, they're kind of out of order here. So that's, I can't tell if that's the top. That can't be the
Go on,
shoulder.
keep going,
But
keep going. We're going to come back to that one in just a second because that explains
yeah.
the mystery of
Where is
what
the
it is.
top of the shoulder? Was that it actually? I can't
Nope,
no.
nope, nope, nope. We're going to come back to that one in a little bit too. Really
And
should have got it in order.
that's the rear end. Oh wait, maybe this is it right here. Yeah, okay.
Yes, exactly. So that's
Yeah.
the top of the shoulder, and you can see that same hole is there. And the reason is because the two motors are sort of rotated 90 degrees to one another and attached
Right.
together. So they're
Right.
designed to fit together. They are identical actuators, and you'll see
Okay.
there's a hole there, and then but there's nothing placed in there, and there's
Right.
one in the other. And the thing about those motors is there's actually four of them on each side. There's eight of them total. So there's
Yeah.
four in the shoulder, and there's one way down in the hip, in the pelvic area. And
Okay.
that's what it's there for. It's to serve the purpose in the pelvic area and has nothing to do with what's going on in the shoulder. Now, the other
Oh,
is you'll see that that is the second actuator in the shoulder, and it's attached to this other flange here, which is also attached to another actuator back there. It's a little bit hard to see, but
right.
back where you see the kind of the black cowling in there, you'll
Like this
see that
part,
there's
like
kind of
way back at the back part back here.
right. And in, yes, so in theory, it's inside the torso. It's built inside the torso. Okay.
Yeah.
In theory, it's going to be in the real one. It turns out it's not actually there in the Optikit. All they have is kind of
Oh,
the top part of it, and it's hidden in there. And we're going to see another image. As I think maybe if we go scroll down, there was like another image you were looking at of the shoulder that we
right.
will see that the that is not concentric with the actuator it's supposed to be there. So we can
Oh,
go ahead and
interesting.
click down.
Okay. Let me quickly show this one again just to remind people.
Yep.
I also want to take just a moment to look at this, the actual surfacing. So you and Chuck determined that this is plastic, correct? For most of the parts.
Yes, yes, yes.
Um,
We were able, we were allowed. We had to sign all sorts of disclosure, forms and stuff like that, and make sure in case it fell on top. No, just kidding about that. But they said we could go up, just touch it, just to kind of see if it was all right.
right.
And it definitely was not metal. I mean, you would have got the clang if it was metal. It clearly was
Right.
plastic. You could see right away it was plastic, and there were the other obvious things. Now, the pin that's in there is a piece of metal, that's for sure,
Yes. Yeah.
and
This
the
part.
ring. The motor itself is probably plastic and then Krylon spray. You
Yeah,
know,
this looks
so,
very much like spray paint. This looks exactly like if
yeah,
you just took basic silver spray paint and sprayed it on there.
yep,
So,
yep,
yeah.
yep. Okay,
So
so the mystery
if
is that,
anybody does want to get in trouble, they could like go and scratch one of these and see if the
oh
paint.
no, 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 I don't advise that.
I am
Okay.
not recommending that. You'll get in big trouble if you do that. But
Okay. If we go back to like the overview of Optimus, just to kind of get our
yeah,
orientation,
right.
uh,
Let's go from
what
here.
we're gonna
Yeah.
do is okay, maybe I
So
think there's another
that,
overall Optimus one, hopefully, because that
like
one's
this one,
probably
the one that's like sideways.
okay. That one's
Yeah.
sideways, so you can see
Yeah.
where
So
the
this is the
big
area right here.
buttocks is. Yeah, you see the
Yes.
real big motor underneath the elbow. And there's
Yes.
another motor right next to it that's vertical. So there's two motors
Right.
there. That vertical one is the identical motor that's up at the shoulder.
Right. So it's like that
Okay,
guy. Let me see if I can do
right.
both.
Now,
Nope. Let me do
now
one. Yeah.
the motors are up on the shoulder. Sometimes they're designed that one motor actually rotates the other motor the way it's mounted. So the first
Right.
and second motors up there are actually connected in such a way that when the first one rotates, it causes the second one to move.
Right.
Now, there are situations where the two motors are connected together and they never actually move. It's
Gotcha.
like the roots on both sides of them kind of move, but in between them they don't. They're locked together. And that's the same thing that's going on in the pelvic area. Is those two motors are connected together and they do not move. Now the vertical motor is designed to rotate about a vertical axis to basically make your toes go in and out. So if
Right.
you think of that way, you can make your toes go from pigeon to duck then
Right.
that's what that motor is doing. The motor in the
Yeah.
back, the real big one, that's to make your legs kind of do what they call abduction, to make it like a big V out of it, if you want to think of it
Right.
that way.
Right.
Something which, like a big motor to do something that's like, we never do that, but it's a really big motor. Okay. Now,
Yes.
when that big motor rotates, the motor it's attached to rotates as well.
Right.
That little motor has to rotate it as well. So the big motor rotates horizontally, that other one rotates, which means you have to have an axis that goes through the two. Okay.
Right.
Now
Right.
there's a big pelvic girdle there. That's that black piece, which goes
Yeah.
through there that
You can see
connects.
that this is like a more of a close up of that, I think.
That's part of it. Now this is the key, is that you're going to look in there, and I didn't really get it quite right. That silver motor there, that's attached to that black piece in the back, should be connected in such a way. I mean, there's actually a gap in between there, and what looks like it's connected, that's just bad perspective. There is
Okay.
a full air gap. There is no axis that goes between there and that black part in the back, which is really weird because that is the thing that makes the whole assembly rotate. Without it being connected to the back, that thing doesn't rotate, period. Okay. Now,
Hmm.
since that whole assembly has to rotate, you need to have a connection point in the back on that, what I guess we can call kind of that upside down heart or love handle on the back,
Yeah.
and on the very front. And I think I have another image showing in the front that we actually have that motor being connected. Okay, this here, I want you to see.
Yeah. This shows it even better, perhaps, as that thing.
What
Yeah.
it shows you is that that should be concentric. They are not. So you can see in
Yes.
the black piece back there, you can imagine a circle there, and that circle should be concentric with the circle that's that motor. And it's way off.
Right.
And it's way
Right.
off because it's not being supported mechanically correctly. So
Okay.
when you put those pins through there, that's going to line up correctly. And now what
Okay.
we're going to try to do is go to the other side. There's an image in there somewhere that shows the other side of that, which is
Uh,
the front of that
no.
pelvic girdle, not there. We'll come back to that one at the
Yeah.
end.
Sorry. It's like me trying to go through your pictures and like,
I was just like grabbing the pictures and trying to send them to you.
yeah, that's,
Keep going, keep going.
I feel like I'm still not seeing that particular picture though.
It was there. I think it was like towards the beginning.
Okay. I see the full, I see the back. I really don't see it. We moved down to the shoulders after that.
Just keep
So
clicking. Let's see what we have. It might keep going.
that, no,
Keep
that.
going. That right there. Right
Oh,
there.
sorry. I didn't even identify that as that. So that's the leg.
It's
Okay.
very difficult. Okay. That's the very front of the bot. Okay. You see
Okay.
the black piece that's there? The black
Yes.
piece is where the belt buckle goes on. So everyone gets the reference on there. And if you look
Okay.
on that piece, it forms kind of a triangle. And there are these three big, what looks like bolts that go right on through there that connect into that actuator.
Right.
And you see it connects into that hole, which is the same hole that's used for the pin that's up top, because it's the same as
Oh,
the shoulder.
okay.
That's why
So,
the hole is there.
and
The
that's why
hole
there's
is
like a hole, but it's filled on the top one, and they would punch that out and actually use that. Okay.
That's the
So,
only reason it's used for. And now that should go all the way through to the back end, but it doesn't go all the way through the back end.
right. Okay. Got yeah,
So,
because that's the thing that would give it the
right,
point of rotation.
right.
Yeah. So it's behind his hand, but it's this area right here. So
Exactly. It's basically where the belt buckle is.
right.
Everyone's sort of familiar with that. Now, if you look at the two arms, you notice one arm is hanging down, one of them is hanging straight out.
Right.
And we kind of noticed something as we were looking around closely. So I think if we look at a couple of other images, I can
Yeah.
tell you
Just real briefly, I had not really noted this before, but there's a little like looks like a little battery attached to the back. I assume that's like a lump to be able to have his motor back there, like a housing or something.
Oh,
For the,
I don't know what's going on in that elbow area. There's
yeah.
it's I mean part of that is just the access for the motors that are the actuators and the
Right.
linkage mechanism that goes between it. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the linkage mechanism they have.
Okay.
And we can just go ahead and click on any one of them there. Okay, so this one here, okay, that is showing pretty much the motor, which is the hamstring.
Yes.
And the motor, which is the quad in front, is not there. It's missing.
So okay, so you're saying like in the model.
Yeah, it's not in the model because it's hidden by
Right.
the plate around the front. So it's like, let's not bother putting it in there. So,
right. So again, we'll use this as our reference point, but like this area right here. So we're looking behind this, and there would be normally a motor in the front as well. But
yes, and that's the actuator for the knee. So the knee actuator is not there in the model at all.
Right.
only the actuator that will make your, for the hip to go up and down. And you can
Right.
see that. And you can see that what looks like the fittings that are in there, they look like they actually are made out of metal. And we're going to see a
Yes.
couple of close-ups of some of them that will reveal that they are metal versus when they are plastic. But the
Right.
housings and everything else there are plastic.
And there is, of course, the question of this could be real, because they might be injection molding plastic. There's, for the housing parts that are just covers, they're not structural. So
The covers could be the real thing. Yes.
yeah. So
And
even though
everything
they're
else,
plastic doesn't mean that they're not real.
right. And
Yeah.
everything else is sort of printed out based on the
Right.
actual cat. So we can see here that all the silvery parts are plastic. And then we
Elbow.
can see, yes. And we can see the fittings that go in there. Those are the real parts. Those are real components.
Right.
Now,
Right.
what I want you to see is that in the elbow, there is a rod that comes down, and
This
it goes
guy.
up in the air. Yep.
Yeah.
Let me see if
Oh,
and yeah,
it's just gapped, isn't it? There's nothing there.
okay. There is a hole there. There's a hole
Right.
for it to go in. If you put it in the hole, the arm will flop straight down.
Right.
And so that isn't even the complete part there. I mean, so the
Uh,
normal one is a little bit longer. What they did is they
right.
took it out, and it's not quite in the hole. It's actually resting. It's popped in there. So if
Right.
you
So
zoom
that's how
in,
they're keeping it not bent at a 90-degree angle.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if you're able to zoom in really close to that
Right.
particular area there, you will
Like
see. Because at first I thought, wait a minute, there's something wrong because there was a mismatch
oops.
between where the hole is that they should
Yeah.
come out, and it wasn't. It wasn't.
You're right. Yeah.
See right there.
That's crazy.
And,
Too funny.
yeah.
And yeah, and so metal, like all of these things are metallic, it looks like, at least.
metallic looking, but they are
Yeah.
plastic.
Oh,
They're
really?
plastic. Oh yeah,
Really?
that's all. That's Now
Wow.
that rod in the end should be metallic.
Yes.
That
Yes.
in the end will be metallic. Now, if we look at the ankle, I think I have an image of the ankle that we'll be
Yes,
able to zoom
definitely.
in a little bit closer.
Right.
And you might be wondering what I want to tell them. If you go right down to where those fittings are, you'll see the
Yeah.
rod that comes down, and you'll see how and you go way down to the bottom there. And if you look really close, you'll see the fittings are metallic. However, the rod is plastic.
Oh,
So they
yeah.
printed out the plastic rod, and then they get these metal fittings and they screwed them in,
Right.
or they
Okay.
attached them somehow. Now,
Right.
the real thing is going to be one solid piece of metal that'll
Right.
be even cast or machined as needed. But in this case, it's a hybrid between the two. And if you don't kind of attach those things quite correctly, you'll see that joint looks a little bit funny. I mean, it's canted in a
Right.
funny way. It should be
Yeah.
rotated a little bit more.
Right.
So, so there were some things that you will notice that things do not line up perfectly in a few places, and there's also like a lot of examples of that up on the wrist. You look at the wrist, you'll see the same thing.
I'm also noticing the effects of being in Florida and the humidity, because that looks like there's a little rust in that area there.
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, I hope it's stainless, but yeah, you never know for a model. They might just
Right. Yeah. I don't know. It definitely looks like there's some sort of rust staining going on that side over there. But anyway, so let's see. We saw that one already. Do you have any idea? So this gets back to this question that we talked about before, but there's a lot of weird little things sticking out with holes
I
in
don't
them.
know what
So,
that, and I have no idea what those, because what you have is you get like two holes on the bottom and two holes up at the top, and it's like, well, wait a minute, aren't those holes designed to line up with each other?
yeah.
And they're just sitting there unused. And
Yeah.
what the real conundrum is that you have all those actuators that are usually used in more than one place, like the
Right.
shoulder actuator, which is the middle one, basically the of the rotational ones. It's the mid-size one. There's 8 of them that are needed to build Optimus.
Right.
And then the really big ones that are there, there's 3 of those that are used because they're down in the pelvic area. But for that one there, and now that's not the elbow one, that's actually the roll of your wrist.
Right.
So that particular actuator is there. You only need 2, one for each arm. So you can almost think of it's only really used in one place. It's used just past the elbow. In which case, it doesn't serve any purpose anywhere else. In which case, that whole design should be optimized for that purpose.
Right.
But it's not. It's like, well, wait a minute. What was it meant to go in the neck? What is it? Was it meant to go somewhere else? Or are they holding it back, thinking that maybe there's going to be another purpose? But I do not see why it has all those things sticking out when all those are going to do is, I mean, think about it, your elbow is always hitting things
Yeah. Yeah.
whenever you're manipulating anything. And last thing
Well,
is you want something kind of sticking out like that, that the blunt
right.
that is going around is just going to get caught in something or scratch something or
Right.
break something. So it,
Or alternatively hit a human. But again,
yeah,
there
yeah,
could, you
exactly. I
might
mean,
attach some sort of plastic shell on the outside of that to make it more,
but
but it seems
seems like
like,
overkill. Yeah,
yeah, it
literally.
seems like over engineering for that. Yeah.
A little bit, yeah. Say you call it over engineering. It's not for the harnesses to go through or cabling because it's definitely too narrow, and you're going to get a lot of chafing and rubbing as it goes through there, which is going to damage the cables. It can only be used as something to support another mechanism that you would have there. So if you
Right.
got a cable tie and you want to tie it down, but I think there's more elegant ways to do a
Yeah.
cable tie than
Yeah.
have something so big and bulky like that that's unnecessary.
Right.
Uh,
This
now I
this
think
one's really funky to me too, because those are those things when you're putting stuff together where they're like, well, we need some slop room. So, the bolt can
yeah.
go through and it can slide around until, so it's like, why would they need that too? Why would you need something
Oh
that's
yeah, yeah. Exactly, exactly, exactly. So you have a slotted hole as opposed to yeah, which usually when you have something that's slotted is because you want to make an adjustment. So yeah,
right,
it just doesn't make sense to me. And
right,
it's not because there's something inaccurate in this model. No, the model turns out to be quite accurate in many ways. So we
right.
can study the mechanism, and when they get one closer to me over in Tampa or in Orlando, I will just do a meetup or something like that and say, hey, everyone come over and we can go through and I'll discuss everything that's going on because I think Chuck enjoyed getting a tour of Optimus and seeing
Yeah,
exactly how the mechanism is going to work because it's not always obvious from our videos and everything else that you see. When you
right,
see it live and you begin to see where the axis is and you understand how the movements of those different rods are going to be able to actuate different things, it
right,
starts to be pretty obvious. The other thing that was interesting because seeing it for real, if we look at the images of the motors that we've
right.
seen many, many, many times,
Yeah,
we have an impression in our minds of how big those things are.
right.
And actually surprised they're much smaller and more compact than I thought. I
Oh,
thought
okay.
they were going to be bigger. And it
Right.
turns out they are actually smaller.
Okay.
And that's
So,
a typical problem with when you're dealing with CAD. You have no idea how big a part is. Even if
right.
you compare it to something else you're familiar with, it's like, oh, this is like the size of a dime or something like that. You still really don't know until it's physically in your hand and you say, oh, it really is that small or it really is that big. So they definitely are a lot smaller, way more compact than I expected.
Okay. That's cool. Yeah, that's what you're a big proponent of VR for that type of activity. I
Oh,
know
yeah, I really
because
am.
it gives you that
Yeah,
sense of how big something is.
it
This is
does.
also really, so this is plastic with a metal threaded bolt
Probably.
that's in here.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
That's what I think. That's what I think. Yep.
Gotcha.
And then I think we're going to get a close up somewhere showing that one there.
Yeah.
Okay. This is
Yeah.
a little bit hard. This is a picture from behind looking at the shoulder.
Right.
And you have to kind of zoom in really closely. And you're going to see how the second joint is sort of connected in there. And you'll see it's kind of way off center from where it's supposed to be. So
Um,
you see
yeah.
there's like, it's almost like a rectangular rod that's coming through that's
Yes.
supporting the arm
I need to
and
back
it's
off.
not in the right location because
Right.
that motor, the cylindrical part of that motor and that upper housing there should be
Right.
aligned.
It
And it's
should be
like,
something a little bit more like that, where the dotted
it looks
line
like it's
is.
at least a half inch too low to me.
Yeah.
It should
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
up a lot higher. So it basically, the Optimus has a dislocated shoulder, is what I want
Ow.
to say.
Ow.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if it was like because it got broke or if it was just sort of designed that way. So it's a little bit off. I did a quick peek at the Optimus at Peterson Museum to
Right.
see whether that was different, and it looks to be the same to me.
Okay.
I think it's exactly the same. Yeah.
Huh. Huh. So it's weird. And again, we're looking at these things without any of the actual motors, any of the wiring and stuff like that. So it's difficult to know exactly. And by the way, for folks who don't know, going to Vancouver in less than 2 weeks now, to fully charge live. And while I'm there, I actually was invited by some folks at the Tesla showroom in Vancouver to come and take a look. So Sean, I'll be saying hi. Anyway, so I'm going to go and
And I can talk you through it. Okay.
yeah, exactly. So we'll take another run at this, but I'll try to take very similar pictures to these pictures there to see if there are any obvious, like, tweaks or
Right.
differences between the
Right,
two of
right.
them.
We can see all the issues that are there going really closely because it's. I did make a video very slowly, but I wasn't able to upload it to you. It kept on
Right.
saying it's like,
Right. It's
oh,
okay.
file size too big. Can't do it
Yeah.
over Wi-Fi. You need Wi-Fi. Can't do it
Well,
over
I tell you
cellular.
what, we're just blabbing at the beginning of this video, so maybe what I'll do is I'll just run that at the beginning, or I guess I can also do this while we talk. I can just put it here, and I'll just like overlay it so people can look at it.
Okay,
So
I'll try to.
did you find anything from running that video? Like, was there anything that was less obvious in the pictures and more obvious from the video, or
It's
not?
more or less, and I have a voiceover on there as well, which you
Okay.
may want to just get rid of when we do it,
Hmm.
explaining what's happening. Where I
Right.
went up and said, "Oh, look at this, this, and this," and then I think I have a couple of videos in there. One where it's explaining how some things actuate,
Right.
and then Chuck would do the actuation for me. So I said, "Well, this does this," and I was like, "Chuck, show us what that does."
It's like,
We get kind of an idea of,
yeah.
of what was going on. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so that's a lot of every little bit of information helps. Of course, now the problem with this is now that we've seen the model version of it, it's like, well, now I want to see the version with the wiring and everything and start to
I want to see the
understand.
real one now. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't see the
it's
actual
like, come on,
version.
Tesla, let's see the wired up version now. But yeah, I think it's really cool to see this. It'll be with luck, whenever AI Day happens, we can hopefully be there in person. But to get, well, I don't know. Last time they were not real. They were not like, you could take pictures of Optimus though. There was that one area where you could take pictures of Optimus, but hopefully we'll be able to get a little bit closer and maybe see some of the wiring harnesses and things. Because maybe that area in the elbow will make more sense when you realize how the cabling and stuff works, or who knows. So that's the biggest mystery in my mind, because it's like, why would you add extra bits and bobs that are not needed? And yeah,
Unless you're thinking of something else down the road.
yeah.
You're
So
thinking some other purpose. Now, I think what they are going to do going forward is they may actually try to simplify or come up with different versions of the housings depending on where they're going, because it's the
right.
guts that matter. And if
Yes.
they have slightly different housings, it might be better. And they may actually be able to make the joining of those two housings a single piece
Yes.
because they're not articulating with respect to each other. It's like, well, wait a
Right.
minute, it's like it's a dual motor, it's like one housing with motors going off in different directions.
Right.
And
Right.
maybe some economies of scale and efficiencies you can get if you design it with the idea that they're going to be coupled together in this particular way. And by doing that, you may be able to take advantage of certain services, your wiring and stuff like that. You might be able to simplify it rather than each one of them has got its own set of wires that are coming in because they're considered to
Right.
be different motors. Now you can say, well, wait a minute, it's the same thing. So let's go ahead and simplify that,
Okay.
as well
So
as getting rid of the exposed pieces that you don't want to have.
right. We didn't talk about the hands. Did you see anything interesting about them, or is it just
I explained a little bit to Chuck how it's going, so you get an idea to look at the hands. And again, you're looking at that. Wow, how are they going to pack those motors in there?
right? Right.
It's pretty delicate, so
Yeah.
it's impressive to look at it. You are seeing that you're missing a knuckle on there because
Yes.
there's only two places. But
Right.
I could not see the springs, the torsion springs that are normally in there. So the hands are there; they're just kind of articulated in a particular place. But clearly, they don't have the tendons that will go in there. There's no reason for them to put anything inside the hands. And if you're
Right.
looking really, really close, so you can see where the knuckles are, I do not see a spring there. I mean, it looks like a piece of plastic that's there to represent
Right.
what this would look like, but it's not actually the torsion spring. But if you go to the video that was the Investor Day video,
Yes.
uh, when the hand was going down and picking up the nut, and you'll
Right.
see that the the knuckle is articulated a little bit, and because it's exposed just a little bit, you're then able to see where the torsion spring is on the inside of there,
Yes.
which you're not
Yes.
seeing exposed here.
Well, and again, they may not actually have those on there because it's a model. So they may
Of
not
course,
have
it's a
bothered putting,
model, and
yeah.
like those tiny little springs are such a pain to put in there. And, it's like I don't know, it only takes you like 30 tries to get them going without it popping out or something like that. And of course, that's why when you do manufacturing, you figure out what's the easy way to pop a spring in.
Right.
What's the technique? Because once you have it down, it's really easy to put it in. But when you're trying to figure it out yourself, it's kind of hard. But it
Right.
is interesting to look at the wrist area.
Yeah.
live. Right? We can see
Right.
so much here, but when you're looking at it live, you really understand how it articulates a little bit better.
Right. But also it looks very delicate. I mean, there's only one very thin connecting piece between the
Yep.
whole wrist, and where the cabling is going to go and everything is a bit of a mystery there,
Yeah,
because
it
that's
is. It's
like,
it's robust enough, but Chuck was pointing that out too. He's just like, well, "Where's the cabling gonna go? Where's it gonna go?" It's
yeah,
like, "It's exterior. It's kinda coming around." And if you look at some of the other humanoid bots that are out there, they haven't figured out the cabling problem either.
right.
Some of them, you see the whole arm and you see what looks like this big hose. It's, like, connected to the hand
Yeah. Right. So again, I
because
mean, if you start to look at this,
everything.
if if you look at this in context, it is possible that, again, this may be some sort of housing for the cabling, that
Mhm.
it's not directly the cabling itself, but that there'll be a housing that's around the entire outside of this arm, so that the cabling goes inside that. But then, of course, that still begs the question of,
How do you go
well, like,
through?
how does it cross over between those two? So yeah,
Yeah, it would be nice, and it's one thing to run a single cable in there, but you've got 6 motors.
yeah, yeah.
And making sure you're able to get it in there, do you have to run 6 independent lines? I would think.
Right. It's crazy. That's a little bit nuts, man. I don't know. It'll be really cool to see how Tesla makes it handles that also. All right. It's almost 5, and I promised my children, my adult children, that we are going to go out
We
and
only
do
took an hour? I thought for sure it would have been longer. Okay.
no, we kept it to pretty reasonable today, so that's good. Anyway, we're
We
going
didn't really talk
bowling.
that much about the static fire. I mean, we could have gone on for another half hour there. What else
Yeah.
happened yesterday? And I didn't talk much about Chuck's left turn and what that
Oh
experience was
yeah, yeah,
like.
yeah. Well, I'll leave that. Everybody watched Chuck's Left Turn with you. That was actually really cool. So you said it wasn't as much of a nail biter as you expected.
Yeah,
You,
it wasn't as much because, I wasn't in the driver's seat.
yeah, yeah,
When you're in the driver's seat, you're more nervous about this stuff because you're not quite
right,
sure what it's going to do. But I'm
right,
sitting there as a passenger, assuming, yeah, Chuck's got everything under control, and it wasn't doing anything that I would have thought would have been a problem.
right,
He had to creep up a bit, people see, because the visibility was pretty bad. Well, that's what you got to do. And then it got out there and it got itself sitting in the medium
right.
the way it's supposed to, and the cars are coming by, and everything felt smooth and natural. And it wasn't like getting thrown around or anything.
Yeah,
So it was definitely quite nice. But trying it on my own, I probably would have been super nervous.
yeah. Well,
Always
you
am.
know what? Next time I'm down in Jacksonville, let me see if I can ask Chuck if I can. Maybe I'll take my car instead of his or something. But anyway, we'll see if
But,
we can do it and try it out.
okay.
Yeah.
So you will be glad that I was not wearing this for Chuck's left turn.
Yes.
I was wearing the beta test shirt.
I
So
saw that. That was great. Thank you. That's
okay.
awesome. Yeah, and I think the big thing to me is always under those circumstances when the car decides to go, it feels like it's a little wussy. That's always my biggest complaint is it's like when you go, go. Don't go like, okay, I'll get out there eventually. You're like, go, 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 you know.
I think Chuck calls it like the confidence pedal or something like that. I had to give it like
Right.
the confidence. Like Chuck said, no, it's the ego boost. You got to give it an ego boost. That's what it's called.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when it has a fragile ego, you give it an ego boost. And that's
Yeah.
what's happening when it's hesitating. It's a fragile ego.
Yeah. So there you go. We need to give it an ego boost once in a while. All right. Thank you
Yep.
so much, Scott. I really appreciate that, especially considering that you are on the road right now. And good luck. Hopefully tonight you will get your double header in one calendar
Yep.
day. That's pretty
Yep.
cool.
I'm probably gonna check the schedule right now. Make sure.
Yeah. Otherwise, head home.
But I think the weather is okay. Last I saw, it should be pretty good. Yesterday, the weather was perfect for lunch.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, have fun with that whole thing. And yep, we'll see everybody in the next one. Check out all the links in the description, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And
Yeah.
we'll see you in the next one.
And I'll
Bye-bye.
be trying to come up with another campground story for the next time.
There we go. Awesome. Yeah. So hold on, man, with bated breath.